and this is my nod to Monty Python, that we're now the knights who say meh. so basically.
Hello and welcome to episode 235 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Saturday the 21st of September. I hope you've had a good week and you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a 4-time CMO. And on this podcast, with the help of my chums, we share the marketing street knowledge that will bring out the Rockstar's marketer in you. Come say hello. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or Rockstar CMO on LinkedIn. This week in our marketing studio, Jeff and I discuss shiny things and smart strategies, my contribution to a book called Collecting Jelly Beans, before I join Robert in our virtual bar for his weekly marketing thought and a cocktail. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day, my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkis-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkisporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the Marketing Studio with Jeff Clark, our in-house strategist and former Forrester Research Director.
Ian, welcome to the studio today. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much, mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. Things are going well out here.
Good. And how's the weather?
We actually we're having, I think, the last 2 or 3 times I have reported on the weather. It has been sunny, dry, rather warm for at least for New England in late September. I guess we could still say we're in middle September. And so have we been able to send any of that your way, or are you guys still stuck in the rain?
No, we've actually had quite a nice week. And so I actually was doing my expenses in the garden today, which was quite nice. But yeah, so we record this in my end of my day, as listeners may know. But yes, so it's winding down now, but it was quite a pleasant day today.
Awesome.
But we are due for a rainy weekend, and it's just the weekend I've decided to go and see my daughter down in Bournemouth, which is a seaside town south of us.
Oh, hopefully there'll be some bright weather during that.
Apparently there's going to be some rain, so we'll see how that goes. And yes, so thank you very much for the welcome. Yeah, sounds good. How are you?
Yeah, well, I think I take over at this point because today we're going to do one of my favorite podcast formats in which I turn the tables, or in this case, the microphone, onto Ian. And because you are a contributor to a new book, which becomes available on Kindle probably the day this podcast drops, or maybe the day before. You can fill in details, called Collecting Jelly Beans. And so congratulations on the book launch. Your chapter, so you are one of a number of contributors with a chapter called Shiny Things and Smart Strategies, which sounds like stuff we talk about here on Rockstar CMO. Yeah. And so perhaps you could start with kind of an intro to the book, the heck it has to do with jelly beans. What are you and your collaborators saying about jelly beans or shiny things? I'll let you do the setup for the book.
Thanks, mate. Well, for a start, I didn't come up with the title. One of the other authors did, but I actually think it's brilliant as well. I think it's brilliant in a number of ways. One is I can just tell people to go search for it. There aren't many other
books collecting
but it's brilliant because the book is actually like a jar of jelly beans. The chapters, they all have something in common, i.e. they are all jelly beans, but there's 10 different takes from a group of sales and marketing leaders, and they were brought together by a fellow Marketing Podcast Network podcaster. So one of our colleagues on this network, a chap called Colin Jeffries, but they're all about the challenges of sales and marketing, and it includes chapters about how to get started with marketing. So there's some stuff that's kind of, early stage small business stuff. There's a chapter about personal brand managing. There's a chapter about managing people, about strategy, keeping clients happy, and it actually closes with a letter to marketers from the CEO by one of the other chaps. It's quite good, but it's an assortment with one common thread, hence the jelly beans, I think. And the brief I was given, and by the way, if you ever get involved with one of these collaborative books, make sure you go to all of the meetings.
Because, this happened at the meeting you didn't attend.
Yeah, because we were sort of collaborating on email, and then they said there was one meeting I just couldn't make, and they decided that that my chapter would be about the distraction of technology and how to stick to your strategy. So really, it's in my wheelhouse. So it wasn't really that much of a stretch, but I would encourage people to go to all the meetings.
Because at that meeting, you could have said, yes, I'll do it. Or you could have said, well, can I tweak that a bit?
Well, I'd kind of already said, yeah, sure. And then on email, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll pick this one up. And then, but hence the chapter title, which is Shiny Things and Smart Strategies. So the shiny things are obviously the technology. And so that's where we were. So it's actually out... Well, actually, when I publish this podcast on Saturday, because we're recording this on Thursday, it's actually out tomorrow, Friday. But when we publish
the 20th,
it'll be yesterday. Yeah. So, and it's actually, I don't know, maybe it's because we've got 10 authors and everybody's been pumping it hard. We're actually already a bestseller in like 4 or 5 different Amazon US categories for pre-release. And I think it helps that at the moment,
I pre-ordered, but how could I not? So
yeah, well, also it was for pre-order. It was only $1.99, so
that's right.
I'm glad
It is cheap.
No,
it's shiny and it's cheap. And does it come with a bag of jelly beans? I mean, do they send you one?
That would push it over the edge. But I also think that you get what you pay for. So yeah, it's $1.99.
All right. Well, we often talk about how marketers get distracted by bright shiny things, and so I wanted to kind of dig into some of your key takeaways in the book. So I've teed up a half dozen questions, but I want to start with it's not just marketers that get involved in this distraction issue. So I was kind of like, what's your take on where all the distractions may be coming from, or where else other than within your marketing department, and when is it most problematic if you're trying to be strategic?
Yeah.
When do these things hit you?
Yeah.
And who hits them with you? Who hits them with you?
But actually, I should have said in the intro, Jeff, a lot of the ideas that I explore in the chapter, obviously, we've kind of fine-honed on this podcast. So I need to give you a little bit of a shout out for helping me with some of this stuff over the years. But and that's a really good question, because is it just marketers that get distracted, to your point? And I feel that there is something behind your question here. And
yes, there is.
And absolutely not. Everyone, you know how it is. Everyone has an opinion about how we should do marketing. And yes, sometimes the distraction comes from a leader who's read about tick face on the proverbial in-flight magazine. We're always talking about the proverbial in-flight magazine, although I don't think anybody has in-flight magazines
No,
anymore.
not anymore.
No,
Well,
so.
sorry, KLM does, as I
Oh,
recall.
cool. All right. So, well, I've worked for Dutch companies, so that could still work. And they then bring in the distraction to the team. So no, it's not just marketers that create this distraction. And to the second part of what you were saying, when does this become problematic? This is actually quite hard to answer. And I found that delicate balance when I was writing the chapter is like, we can't just dismiss new things, and we are naturally curious, and we need to be naturally curious, and we'll talk about that in a little while. And I'll describe marketers as magpies. We're always on the hunt for these shiny things, but technology is a free puppy, not free beer, right? So it will need to be looked after. It will be a distraction, whatever it is, whether it's a new tool or whether it's a new channel. It will need to be looked after, and it will be a distraction. But it's trying to make that a healthy distraction. And I wish I'd thought of this when I was writing the chapter, because that really is a bit like beer, isn't it? beer can be a healthy distraction or an unhealthy distraction. I wish I thought of that.
It can be, and a free puppy can be either. But
yeah.
But I like the free puppy metaphor, because, as you said, you gotta take care of it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I dig into in the chapter is, and we've talked about this on the podcast as well, is about this idea of user empowerment. Because these tools empower business users. So they empower us as marketers. But what does empowerment mean? It means that we have to do the fucking work, right? We're empowered. Nowadays, we're empowered to create websites without techies, to create content without copywriters, design without designers, and create reports without data scientists. So empowerment now means you're doing the work. So every new tool means that, you're empowered. So that's where the distraction is. There's a level of effort that these things bring along with them.
Yeah. And, one of the reasons I was thinking about the timing question is that it's tough when you get, kind of spitballed with ideas when you're you're working on the strategy, because you don't want to put the tools and the tactics first. You want to be thinking about, well, what context would I put that in? Which leads me to my next question, which is, when confronted with a shiny thing, you can't just dismiss it out of hand. So how do you try to get back on track with the strategy, as opposed to going down what we always love to call the rabbit hole?
What's that thing in baseball where you throw a really easy thing and you can hit it? Is it a slow ball or a... it's I don't know what it is. I thought there was a name for it. Maybe I'm wrong, but because I'm trying to come up with American analogies. But that's a lovely question, Jeff, because I think you might like this answer based on what we spend a lot of time discussing on this podcast, and it might sound a bit basic, but first you need a strategy, right? So if there's all you're mentioning here about getting back on track with a strategy, but a lot of us are on the hamster wheel and we don't have a strategy, right? And I don't mean a strategy that we did 6 months, 18 months ago that's gathering dust in a digital drawer somewhere, but an implementable thing that you can constantly use to evaluate these things. And it's because I think it's incredibly hard to ask. It's incredibly hard to ask why. We're always talking about, well, ask why. Why do we need to do that? When the CFO wants more video and the CEO thinks we should be on tick face, if you don't have a strategy that can provide guardrails in those conversations, right, you're in permanent react mode. So, and I think the way that you phrase the question there is exactly the challenge, isn't it? It's like, just give me a minute with the strategy. I'll be ready in a minute. Ask me this question at the end of the quarter. I'll be ready. And that's the trouble. And because as we constantly talk about, we marketers are on a hamster wheel. And the thing that I was kind of exploring with this, and I've been exploring a bit in the book that I said I was going to write, is I'm a big fan of the idea that successful marketing leaders in these noisy times with all this constant change, particularly around technology, is that we need to focus. So I'd push back. I'm pushing back a little bit on that second part of the question of getting back on track, because you need a track in the first place. And it's the best thing is to have not gone too far down this rabbit hole in the first place, right? Is if you can avoid the rabbit hole with these guardrails and having a strategy, then you're in better shape, I think.
Yeah, and I as you predicted, I totally agree. So you can disappear down the rabbit hole, and it is. But when you think about like the business has a strategy, and that's not a fleeting thing. I mean, that's something that is a constant over, hopefully a little bit more than a year. Usually if you're trying to think about like where you are, we in the past few episodes we've been talking about the STARS framework, and are you guys in growth mode? Are you in transition? What where are you? Startup, et cetera. So there's typically a business strategy that marketing's got to map to, and that can't be something that just kind of comes and goes, and so there's some constants that I think we want to keep reminding ourselves and our teams about in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So that brings me to my third question, which is, what are the elements of a strategy that really help the CMO make, the strategy and the decisions they're making, whether it's about the tools or the channels they're going after, make that relevant to their C-level colleagues?
Well, and also we haven't signposted the fact that we've got 5 effing questions plus 1, right? So that's number 3.
Yes, yeah. It's the 5 plus 1 episode.
Well, I think you answered the question already, but I think in that kind of the segue from the last question, because and the answer, my answer to this question without reading the chapter. It's about creating art. So the model that I talk about all the time, so unsurprisingly in this book as well, is awareness, revenue, and trust. So it's the point of creating these metrics that are recognizable by other people in the C-suite, right? So not the nudie little things that we marketers get carried away with, but actually how do we elevate that up to some very key OKRs and metrics that the C-suite understands, and they'll understand awareness, revenue, and trust, right? And so that's always what I'm talking about. That's what I talk about in my day job. That's what I talk about all the time, is awareness, revenue, and trust. And then the nice thing is I always make the other point whenever I'm presenting this stuff. I always say, well, often when I talk to sales leaders, they would choose revenue first, and that would make it RAT. And nobody's going to get excited about creating RAT. You want to create art. But one of the other authors, when he was reviewing my chapter, a sales leader himself, a chap called Sean O'Shaughnessy, said, I would argue that trust comes before revenue. No prospect buys unless they trust that the product doesn't suck, will likely do the job, and is backed by a company that won't screw them over. But then ATR is probably a worse acronym than RAT. So,
well, you could have if TRA, he could be TRA, right? Trust, revenue, and awareness.
So we've had all the combinations of it there, I think. But I thought that was fantastic. So, I like the fact that often when I'm talking about creating art, is that it's something that everybody can kind of respond to, whether you're a leader in sales or whether you're the CFO or whether you're the CEO. Everybody understands that what we in marketing do is create awareness, revenue, and trust. See, I'll go on to the revenue first there. I'm over. So, and then as you pointed out in your segue into this question, is I also couldn't avoid talking about the STARS thing. I mean, especially as, we've been talking about it a lot on the podcast recently. And I think, apart from understanding what the goals of the business are, you need to understand what type of business you're in, and whether it's the STARS model, which was startup, turnaround, accelerated growth,
something other growth. So sustained growth is the other S, and
sustained growth at the end, and realignment.
Yes, which is a lot like turnaround. But anyway,
yeah, I should always put these in the notes, but I think we've talked about it so much now that we can remember it. So, So I also talk about that as a strategy for figuring out the business you're in, figuring out what your goals are, and then and all this is very important for creating that strategy.
And I think you've also been able to point out the problem with acronyms is that you want an acronym to sound nice, like STARS sounds nice, ART sounds nice, RAT doesn't sound so good. I put in the notes, I don't know if it's relevant, but RAT or STARS is just rat spelled backwards with an S at either end. But seriously, as particularly when the conversations we had around OKRs and goal setting, I mean, it's like you got to be thinking up at a level that is relevant to the business. And so awareness, revenue, trust, are always relevant to the business. Even if they're not big fans of brand, it's like you got to put it. Every salesman knows you can't just knock on a door cold and get anywhere.
I think that, yeah, absolutely. And the point really that I was making here with building in the strategy into this stuff is when somebody comes to you, say, is it going to create for us awareness, revenue, or trust? And it's a very simple way of starting that sort of why conversation.
Yeah.
How is this new shiny thing going to help us with any of these three things? And if you can't explain it, then maybe it isn't something we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you can't afford, this is the fourth question. You can't afford, every piece of tech or every marketing channel. You just can't fit it in your budget. So how do you prevent the budget creep that kind of take money away from as we're wanting to stick to the strategy, the strategic investments?
Yeah, no, you're you're a very knowledgeable question asker. Because I'm sure that in your years with Forrester and Serious Decisions, you probably saw this quite a lot. And because I also think that when you say afford, when I think about afford and I think about budget, I think it's not just about money, it's also about time and energy, right? And that's where I find a lot of distraction happens within marketing teams, is you'll spend half a day down some rabbit hole. What it costs you is in people and time and energy rather than just in budget. And that's kind of some of the big danger with some of this distraction. It's like that free puppies thing, right? Because a cheap thing you pick up for a few bucks on a credit card can actually be not only a huge distraction in terms of people figuring it out, but also it can be a huge distraction in, okay, so this thing's got data in it, it's got content in it, it's got people in it, and it's got customer. How do I then integrate that with everything? And it snowballs, doesn't it, in terms of what happens. But anyway, back to your question. I came across this wonderful idea actually from the world of software development, the discipline of extreme programming. I've actually written a blog post about this as well, and the phrase is, "You ain't gonna need it," it comes from. It's called the YAGNI principle. You ain't gonna need it, and is based around the premise that in software development that states that a programmer should not add functionality until deemed necessary. And I really like this word necessary in that phrase. And I think that, we have nicked stuff from software development before when we're in terms of marketing strategy, like agile, for example.
Yep.
And I won't go there because we've done that a few times. But I
I'll
believe,
go there, don't worry.
which I believe you ain't going to need, which is ironic on this. But I think there's something in this YAGNI principle, because I think if you think about whether something is necessary, you're asking why. You're going back to your core principles. You're going back to your strategy, and we're trying to par everything back. We should be thinking about that, about paring everything back to what delivers against these business objectives, not just piling on more shit, that we need to get involved with. So that's and in fact, the way that I imagine this in the chapter was on one shoulder was a magpie cooing about how shiny something is. Come on, try it. You need to. And then on the other shoulder was a Yoda-like character embodying our older, wiser, skeptical marketing leader self, saying, "You ain't gonna need it." And I'd actually love to write a whole book about YAGNI. I don't know whether I can, but I love this premise that you ain't gonna need it.
Yeah, I love the YAGNI concept, and like in agile processes, there's also the idea that if something's not helping you, if it's not adding value to the customer, et cetera, it's just, if it's not, in this case, not furthering your goals to be more effective and efficient, then you just got to dispense with it, because otherwise it's just, it's just going to get in the way. So
absolutely.
Yoda and YAGNI, I think are
But also on that agile thing, the reason why I don't like agile, as we've discussed a few times, is I just think marketing is agile, right? I think that the challenge with this YAGNI idea is that it really weans us off this sort of magpie shiny things, perpetual adding more to our marketing thing. Let's just think about how we take away. And I think actually that would be a harder thing to implement than agile.
I think taking things away is always hard. Once you've got it, it's particularly with technology. I guess I've run this with tech assessments. Once you got something in place, and if it may be working for somebody, but if it's not working for your objectives, then it's hard to take it away.
Well, I tell you, I've been in a situation, I think you and I might have discussed it back in the day, is I've had members of the team fall in love with some product that they want to implement. And to me, looking at it, it's like, well, this is just a content management solution and we should find a different solution to do that using our existing tools, blah, blah, all the boring things.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, but it's shiny. And you're like,
it's shiny.
it's just going to be horrible. No. And people hate it. People hate that. So I think this YAGNI thing would make you hugely unpopular, if nothing else.
It could be, but it sounds cool. You say, YAGNI, it's, and then.
Yeah. But also, Jeff, I know we're wandering off your questions and the script a little bit, or not the script, but, what you were going to ask. But, your experience I find really interesting. And you just touched on it just now about doing tech assessments. The amount of budget that you, in your time when you were at Forrester and Serious Decisions, that you've managed to reclaim for marketers just from doing tech assessments, I thought was inspiring.
And you're and you make the point about it's not just the dollars budget, it's the time budget, because the time could be where the real problem is.
Oh yeah, especially when you dive down particular rabbit holes like reporting and integration and trying to make things work together. And absolutely. All right, sorry mate, what's in
so on to question number 5, and for the listeners we're going to do 5 plus 1. So there's another bonus question after. So leaders who bang on about sticking to the strategy can be viewed as kind of old school or kind of stick in the mud types. So how do you avoid that stereotype?
You're making me laugh with these questions. In fact, a couple of questions ago, I thought I'd have a sip of tea while you're asking the question. It made me laugh so much I nearly spat it out. How do you avoid that story? I think you mean us, right?
Yes. Well, sorry, I shouldn't have said yes so quickly. I remember being in like advisory meetings with people, and I'd say, you need to follow this, there's this model and it requires you to, and they just look at you like, really? We're going to do something. We're going to get organized. Not here, buddy. That's the thing. Anyway.
Well, let me just push back a little on someone with some focus and a stick in the mud. I agree because I completely agree. In a way, you can't have a set opinion or a playbook that you take from company to company. And I think probably we've seen that with some senior marketers that perhaps we've worked with. And because it doesn't work like that, and you do lose your team and you do lose your audience and your customer, because you need to be tuned into the needs of that company and develop your strategy around that. I think if somebody is seeing, obviously there will be people that want to be more maverick and they want to go and do their own thing, and they're going to get the ump when you say you can't have that new shiny thing. But if somebody in the leadership team doesn't see you as old school and sticking mud, if they understand the need for a strategy and for us to stick to it, then you're in good shape, right? And I think it might be more of a problem with the organization than yourself if you're trying to actually create a plan, right? And so I think that you and I talk about the fundamentals, and I think that's the key thing, is that as long as everybody understands what the fundamentals are of what we're trying to achieve as a marketing team, and they're technology, tactic, and channel agnostic, then I think you're in good shape, right? That isn't boring stick in the mud stuff. That's just how fucking B2B marketing works, right? Let's all agree that. And it also goes back to the jokey analogy that I used, an executive telling us that we need a tick face strategy, right? We're going to look a bit daft if we've never heard of tick face. By the way, if you've never heard of tick face, it doesn't exist. I just made it up.
Darn. I Googled it and I found it.
But you're going to be, you're going to be in a much better place if you've already considered it as a new if you've already considered a new channel or a new technology that somebody had come across, and you've already have some sort of coherent plan around it, and maybe your plan says no, or YAGNI, or it says we should really look into this more and do an experiment. It's going to be far better when somebody walks into the room and says, "Have you thought of this?" You can say, "Yes, I have, and here's the thing." So I think that we need to keep our periscope up. So you can't be stick in the mud, as you're saying. And that's the balance, I think, is we need to be somewhat magpie-ish. We need to keep the periscope up for what's new and shiny. And we also need to build time, budget, and energy into experimentation, right? So where we were saying earlier on about distractions, there's a difference between distraction and an experiment. If you purposefully have goals, like a proof of concept, yes.
Yep.
If this thing does this thing, then that'll prove the concept. Then that's okay. But it's often hard to maintain that headroom in your planning because we're all, like we said, we're all in this we're all on this hamster wheel. There's more to be done. We don't have the time. But I think in general in marketing, we need to be lifelong learners. It's the
I think we actually touched that on one of the sessions we had on budgeting. Is that make sure you budget a little bit for experimentation because it's. And I certainly agree because as continuous learning is essential. It's essential in life. If we weren't continuously learning, then you and I would be stuck doing the things we were doing 3 decades ago. And I'd be wondering, why doesn't anybody want to advertise in print magazines anymore? Jeez.
And it may surprise the listener to discover that we don't do the same things we did.
That is certainly true. Yes, when I look at my LinkedIn profile or my resume, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did. Wow, that's old hat. So for the bonus question, is there anything else that CMOs should maintain as kind of like their North Star other than this, focus on strategy, goals, and metrics?
Well,
what else should we be thinking of?
Well, to be honest, little confession here. In the chapter, I wrote about 3,000 words before I got to the most important people. And the most important people, obviously, are the customers and our audience and how all this will impact them. So quite often, if we were going to talk about art and we're going to talk about all these goals, it can't just be about your inside out view of the world. It needs to be a bit of outside in how it impacts them. And I know that you and I, we've been through the ringer on this one. We used to talk a lot about customer experience, and not just the customer experience like post sale, but during pre-sale and during the marketing phases. What does this mean for their experience? And while I think, what was it, a decade ago, we maybe got a bit carried away on that. I think that we need to make sure that is also part of our marketing planning. And maybe it's the role of the CMO actually to represent the customer when it comes to making these sorts of decisions. And so I think when we think about marketing automation, sending things faster, doing more, crank the handle on more AI guided content or be on more channels, what does that mean for the customer? Do they want to engage with us in that way? Is any customer or an audience member going to say, we need more content from you and preferably written by AI, please?
Don't give me any of that. Don't give me any of that stuff written by humans.
Yeah. Don't give me any quality shit. I want a constant bombardment of AI content.
You're
please.
On.
Yeah.
So you're forgiven for writing 3,000 words before getting to the customer, but I guess. Putting the customer first is often a given, and maybe some of your other colleagues in writing the Jelly Bean book or have covered that topic. But it is important just to remind ourselves that when we invest in something, whether that's putting time or putting money in it, that we just need to examine what's the impact on the customer, and oftentimes the right thing for our efficiency might not be the right thing for their efficiency or their experience. So anyway, this is a great introduction to the book, or at least your chapter in the book, and the listeners here should not feel like they got everything out of this 25 to 30 minute discussion. There is more in there. I have read the advanced copy, if you will, at least of the chapter. Mm-hmm. But let's review your big takeaways. Is one, understand the business needs and define your strategy and goals. That's kind of first out of the gate. Then evaluate all opportunities for new tech, new channels against those goals. As a leader, you got to stay current. So, the continuous learning, fostering curiosity, innovation of the team is really important. Collaborating with tech partners and vendors to ensure you are current. So, the innovation goes to the whole ecosystem you're working with to further your marketing, and Last but not least, consider the customer experience. Aside from your goals, the strategy, how does this support the customer and what they're trying to do in engaging with you?
Fabulous.
So
you really did read it.
I did read it, and I wrote down. I think your chapter had the 5. Maybe this is true with the way the format of the book is.
Yeah.
That every chapter ends with "Here's your 5" or however many.
Yeah, no, that was me, and you know me and 5 effing things, so I had to summarize it in 5 things.
The editor said, "I just wanted 4." No, it's got to be 5.
Well, I think I don't know. I think I might have been. Well, I think other people have summarized their chapters, but I think I was the one who did that particular format.
I have found that in nonfiction books, I find a summary at the end of a chapter is often good.
What you may also find is that there isn't as much swearing in the book as there is in this podcast.
That's fine. It's in print. It's it's in print, even if it's digital. It's a little different. So anyway, we often end, or we always end with a song to kind of like put people in a good mood as they have stopped listening to this particular section of your Rockstar CMO podcast. So I gave the responsibility to you. Although the one thing I did find is there are a lot of songs with the title "Shiny Things." But you went with something different. So what are we going to play out?
I did, and it's actually something that's new for me and not necessarily a genre I'm normally listen to a lot. But we found loads of songs that were shiny things. I think your Tom Waits suggestion was the kookiest.
It was the kookiest.
Tom Waits is quite an interesting artiste. But no, I've gone for All That Glitters by Kate Earl from 2017, simply for the line, we've got to take our chances, can't always play it safe, because I wanted to end with the idea that you should do these experiments, and actually technology and channels is a good thing, right? So apart from the obvious that all that glitters ain't gold, which is the premise of the song, I wanted to say, you got to take your chances.
Got to take them. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And again, everybody, go on Amazon or wherever you get your books
from.
Yeah.
I think the paperback edition comes out on Friday as well. So, and I don't know I know that it's all available on Amazon. I know that some people have not a great relationship with Amazon. So I'm assuming it's going to be available elsewhere also. And if you can't find it, give us a shout.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I earned a pretty penny. I've turned a head or two. I've learned you let your guard down when somebody's good for you. I've seen some miracles, been flown across the world to learn firsthand what they say. All that glitters isn't gold. All that glitters isn't gold.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a tiny slither of All That Glitters by Kate Earl from 2017. Next week, Jeff will get a break as it's Kathy McKnight's monthly visit to the studio, and we'll be discussing all things marketing tech and getting her take on this year's Dreamforce that has just finished in San Francisco. That's next week. Now it's that time of the week to retire to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with the chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, Robert Rose, for a cocktail and a marketing thought. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. Welcome to the bar. I don't know how it's going in jolly old London town.
Yes.
That's what you technically call it, yes? Is jolly
yes,
old
absolutely.
London
Everybody
town?
calls it that.
Yeah. There's not cliche or
no.
stereotypical at all.
Yeah, no, everybody says that.
That's right. Okay. Jolly old London town. But it's the weather here in Southern California has been absolutely spectacular fall like weather. So
yes.
I am feeling the fall and feeling the wonderfulness of it. And yet I have a summer drink for us. So
nice.
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is for you in California, a beautiful fall is like high summer for us, right?
That's true. That is true.
I mean, it's just for you, it's cool enough that you can actually leave the fucking house, right? So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so it's like,
that is true.
I think that's a beautiful day for us, and we would definitely be out there in shorts and t-shirts and drinking summer drinks. So It's totally
Okay.
appropriate.
Well, then yes, then as you come across from jolly old London,
Yes.
then we'll have this wonderful little drink
Yes.
here, and this is a favorite of mine. I have to say, it's called a Cantarito. And if you like palomas, those sort of tequila and grapefruit juice, you are going to love the Cantarito. And it's just a lovely, lovely drink for summer. And the way that we make it is, you're familiar with the spice tahini? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you
Vaguely,
take a
yeah.
little tahini and you put that so a lot of people in a margarita will make a salt rim around the glass.
Yeah.
Well, now you're going to make a tahini little seasoning around the rim of the glass, because that's going to, the combination of this with the fruit is just, all right. So very quick side story here in Los Angeles,
Yes.
you have these Mexican fruit sellers on the street. And it's a very famous thing here in Los Angeles, and it's in Mexico too. But in Los Angeles, it's a thing where you can literally buy pineapple or other fruit, and it's on a stick. And what they do is then they spread tahini all over the fruit, and it's absolutely delicious. So a little tahini over pineapple, or on watermelon, or on really any fruit that you like, citrus fruit or etc. Anyway, coming back to the drink, the tahini seasoning around the rim. 2 ounces of your favorite tequila, reposado, because we're making a cocktail. Remember, we don't make cocktails with anejos. We make cocktails with reposados. And so 2 ounces of your favorite reposado. And then you can mix here to taste. It's a combo of grapefruit, orange, and lime. Now, typically, I'll go with a little more grapefruit, orange, and then use lime as a sort of a splash on that. But again, to your taste, grapefruit, orange, and lime, all three. And then basically a pinch of salt that goes in the drink itself. And then if you want, again, you don't need it, but you can put a little soda water if you like it sparkly, if you want a little, fizz to it or anything like that. I like it plain. I don't like my cocktails fizzy, so I skip that part, but you can put that part in there. And then, of course, mix all that up together. And it's absolutely a spectacular summer drink.
That sounds delicious. Cantarito. Nice.
Cantarito.
And where would I?
And they actually have when you get this in Mexico, you get it in what they call a Cantarito cup. Jarrito de barro, and it's a special cup that is basically made of clay, that is sort of a thermal. It's like drinking it out of a thermos, right?
Right.
And basically, it keeps drinks cooler for longer, basically because you're in the near the equator and stuff like that. So all of that. But you can do it in a special cup, or you can just do it in a glass if you're in jolly old London town and you're have a cool afternoon there.
Yes, I shall have to. We do have some. There is a little bit of Mexican food that you can buy in jolly old London. So I'll have to see if any of those any of those bars do feature Cantarito next time I'm in. That sounds splendid. But we wouldn't drink these in London. Where on earth would we drink these? What?
Oh, well, I think we would basically have to go somewhere around here, because it's been such a beautiful, like to bring you into the summer and me into the fall. I think we're going to do it somewhere here in Los Angeles. Maybe go out to the beach here in Los Angeles, and there's a place down in Santa Monica where we could sit out on the patio and drink our Cantaritos and have some Mexican food and watch the sunset or something like that.
Nice. Sounds perfect. And when conversation turns to marketing, as it often does with us, mate, what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, doesn't it always? It's like it always turns to marketing. It's sort of a fucked up thing, if I'm being honest.
Well, yeah, especially as before we press record, we were talking a lot about American football. So there's no actual, But I just say that every week, just so we can get onto the topic of marketing. So
yeah, excellent. So there's a really interesting set of. So we just released CMI, Content Marketing Institute, just released our marketing career research and what's going on in marketing careers and job and the reactions to AI, et cetera. And there's this interesting thing that happens The psychologists call it the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomena, I think it's called. It's basically whenever you focus on something, all of a sudden you see it everywhere, right? You're buying a new car, all of a sudden that model car is like all you can see on the street, right?
Yeah.
And so the last week or so, I have just been like, oh, there's another study on AI and what's going on with careers. And oh, there's another study about what's going on in AI and jobs and all those sorts of things. And it's interesting because when we looked at sort of the results that came out of our own study, the Content Marketing Institute study, I've been calling it that marketers are now, and this is my nod to Monty Python, that we're now the knights who say meh. So basically, right now there's a lot of like, we're not doing that great, with our demand generation, and we're doing okay. And that, the same meh feeling, it sort of applies to everything about their ability to create targeted content, their ability to measure things, their ability to create more and better content for their personas. It's all sort of meh, that, and interestingly, when we started to look at that with AI, and AI sucking all the oxygen out of the sort of innovation room at the moment. And the interesting thing is that there's this pressure to get good at generative AI that's being, primarily driven out of the C-suite. We know this, leadership. And what's fascinating to me is that all these other sort of research pieces that are out there, that's fascinating to me that so many of them are finding this, trying to figure out this common FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt narrative in the data, and really twisting things around to find it, right? And all of the, it's like when you start to think of it, when we asked, then this is in our research, when we asked marketers about what they were going to do with AI in this coming year, so 57% of them, almost 60%, think it's going to be the biggest impact on their demand gen strategy. But when we asked about it, it's dead last, right? It's dead last in terms of what is having an impact right now. And so it's like there's this pressure to get good at it. There's this pressure to like figure it out, but that pressure is getting generated by all these other stories out there that are sort of twisting things around. I mean, there was a recent Kantar study that came out literally this week or last week that basically found that, okay, AI is with the majority of marketers, and they primarily looked at the media industry. They said the majority of those folks are thinking AI has already had an impact on our organization with, people, et cetera, with the workflow and how we're working. But then you looked at it and said, what do what do these people value in new employees or new people adding to their strategy? AI ranks dead last. In terms of, and what's the top? Storytelling, great strategy, great communication skills, all those kinds of things. So the skills that are in demand right now are all the same types of skills that we've wanted from marketers forever. They tell great stories, they're great writers, they're great communicators, they're great strategists, they think, about data, they have a good sense of digital technology, and AI is dead last. But when you ask about what's, what they believe is happening in the world, they believe that AI is shifting the world. Gartner just came out with a research study that said, well, it wasn't just, it was a few months ago. They came out and said that they looked at 300,000 advertisements, and less than 1% of them had any correlation to AI being a requirement for content creation or AI being part of the job requirements.
I saw
So
that.
this feeling that we have out there that, that basically AI is turning the world upside down just isn't true at the moment.
Right.
And what seems to be happening is that this idea is that there's a pressure to do something about AI because everybody thinks it's going to be this huge thing, which may be true and may not be true. But right now, if people are feeling bad or they're feeling behind or they're feeling like they've got to figure it out, we should just say, you know what? pump the brakes a little bit. You're okay, right?
Yeah.
Don't get so wrapped around the axle of AI that you forget to figure out all the other things that you still have to do as a marketer. Great content, great strategy, great communications, great figuring out of first party data, all these other things that you need to sort out, because all that stuff is still true. And so I think, and this is sort of coming around to the punchline, that this reason that most marketers are sort of in this meh sort of attitude right now is because they're so overwhelmed with trying to get it good at something that they haven't felt like they've had the time to be able to get good at, that they're just sort of leaning back on old habits, not trying new things, not trying, innovative things that are outside the bounds of AI, and thus sort of basically living the same storybook that they lived last year and the year before and the year before that and the year before that. But the world continues to change.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage people really to start thinking about there are other ways to innovate other than what's going on in AI. Yes, AI is important. Yes, figuring this out, but there are other things going on in marketing that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think, but I think an AI will play a part in that, and it is something we were talking about before I hit record. Is it's there as part of, I think your phrase is part of the operating system, but it's not the innovation. So I think if you're a marketer and you want to do something innovative, AI will support you and help you with that, but the innovation isn't going to be AI, if that makes sense. I think
That's totally it. AI is a
yeah.
feature. It's not an application, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because I was just this week looking at that same CMI Institute report, and you guys do great research, I think, into the minds of B2B marketers, and it's really worth a read. And I especially like the nights that say meh.
Yeah.
If you ain't writing that blog post, man, that has to be written.
That is where I'm going.
So on that base, I mean, is that the same thing you're seeing with your clients? Is it just like yes, this AI thing is actually happening, but our basic problem is the thing we're always talking about, which is they're basically getting their content strategy sorted out.
What I'm seeing with clients, and so this is totally anecdotal, right? I don't have the data to really show this, nor would I purport that to be, but with all due sort of caveats about what may be true here, what we're seeing in clients is, quite honestly, AI is the thing that everybody does when they go home at night, right?
Oh, wow.
The actual work that's getting done is the same blocking and tackling that's been getting going for years, right? And in some ways, that pressure to get good at AI and figure it out is sort of a distraction at the moment from where these clients are starting to think about. Everybody's so worried about AI and search and what's going to happen with AI and content creation, and how are we going to make AI sort of a thing that we can talk to with our measurement and personalization. And it's a big distraction right now because nothing tangible is actually happening, right? They're not actually implementing it. They're not actually other than using it as a single, like you said, as part of their OS, right? As part of, it helps me rewrite a paragraph of my blog, or it helps me write the abstract to my webinar that I have to put out, or it helps me do this one small thing, which is great. And certainly no small accomplishment, but it's not rewriting the business plan, right? I mean, it's not rewriting our marketing strategy. It's not, taking over as a full-time employee and our automation processes, right? It's just a thing that we're doing off to the side as we try and get the basic blocking and tackling of putting great content out and persuading people to do stuff.
Yeah, but I do think, and this is a point that you made on This Old Marketing episode that was out today on the 20th of September, was you made the point about the people aren't, that developing your strategy and developing some of these things that people are using ChatGPT for, the process of development is important. And I don't know whether I'm phrasing this correctly, but do you see what I mean? I think that's the bigger risk as well, as people are just like, oh, I'll just bung it into ChatGPT and it will give me my plan or my strategy or some other thing that isn't just like a blog post. And I'm totally against it, because I think that you need to follow the process. And it may be that ChatGPT can tell you the 5 steps to a content strategy, but there's a level of it you need to think about yourself and how it's going to be appropriate for your business, don't you? That thinking time is important as well. Yeah, I don't know.
That was a really long and complicated question, but
sorry,
yes,
buddy.
But
I sometimes think this is my podcast.
Well, here's the thing. The answer to it is, yeah, that's right.
No, and also I was using it as an opportunity to promote your podcast as well, because I think you had a really good conversation today about the use of AI in terms of let's not outsource our marketing brains, right?
I'm always conscious that I can come across as a bit of a Luddite on this thing, but I am finding myself more and more and I listen to so much, right? I listen to the podcast, I read a lot, and a lot of it is around this idea of how it's the seismic changes that are coming with this, and there's and safety and all the things, and the robots are going to take over the world, and it's going to put agencies and consultancies out of business, and all those things. I immediately add an asterisk to everything I'm saying, yeah, that might be true. It doesn't feel that way to me. I don't have the same feeling about this that I had in 2000 when the internet started to come around, right? I just don't have the same, like when the internet came around, my stomach would literally have butterflies in it going, this is going to change the world. And I know, even saying that, it's like, oh, AI is such a huge thing. Of course it's going to change the world. And right now, for the immediate short term, it just doesn't, it feels like a very useful, new, interesting tool that we can use, that will ultimately have, significant limitations. But I'm definitely in the minority there. I just don't, and acknowledge that, right? And and I'm staying open to being wrong, right? By the way, I'm staying way open to being wrong here. But I'm just not getting the same emotional feeling that I got before. So I have to respect that.
Yeah. Well, when people are looking for your not feeling emotional about AI, where would they find such content?
Well, they'll find it, I don't know. They'll find it on the internet. They'll find it a lot of different places. They'll find some of it on our website at contentadvisory.net.
You're doing the very personification of a marketer going, meh.
Yeah.
I don't know, the internet, whatever.
I don't know. Search that damn thing called Google. I don't know.
Type in.
You'll find it somewhere. Some chucklehead is talking about it somewhere.
And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
They'll find me literally on LinkedIn a lot. I'm spending a lot of time there. And our little podcast that you were kind enough to mention is thisoldmarketing.com. You can go
love it.
Check it out.
Or they'll find you on your lawn going, AI, get off my lawn.
Exactly. That's right. You'll find me in the yard yelling at clouds is what you'll find me doing.
All right, mate. And will I find you yelling at clouds in the bar next week?
You will indeed.
All right, man. I look forward to it. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. And with all those weekly thoughts, they all come from his column on the Content Marketing Institute blog called Rose-Colored Glasses. Just search for Robert and Rose-Colored Glasses and Google will find it. So that's a wrap on episode 235 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me, Jeff, and Robert, and all the things we discussed in the show notes, along with our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes on rockstarcmo.com. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. So please say hello, rate or review us in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, as I mentioned, Kathy pops in for a monthly update on all things content tech, and Robert will be back in the bar. In the meantime, have a great week. I hope you can join me here next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.